Something shifts in the air as one year closes and another waits to begin. Maybe you're listening to this in those tender days between December and January. Or maybe you've found this recording months later, carrying your own need for a fresh start. Either way, you're here because something in you whispers that this moment could be different. But here's what nobody talks about: the weight that comes with new beginnings. The quiet exhaustion of trying to become someone better while carrying everything from before. You've made promises to yourself, broken them, made them again. And somewhere in all that striving, you forgot the most revolutionary thing the Buddha ever said. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Not after you've achieved your resolutions. Not once you've transformed into someone else. Right now, beginning with this breath. What we're exploring together isn't another self-improvement strategy. It's something older, gentler, a practice of beginning anew that doesn't require you to abandon who you are. It starts in the most unexpected place, with loving kindness directed toward yourself first. Not others, not the world, you. Over the next 3 hours, something inside you will shift. Not because you'll force it, but because you'll finally allow it. If it feels right, share where you're listening from and what you're hoping to begin anew. Then settle in somewhere comfortable, somewhere quiet. Let the year ahead wait just a little longer. We begin now. There was a woman who spent 40 years waiting for her life to begin. She waited through her 20s, thinking happiness would arrive with the right partner. She waited through her 30s, believing it would come with career success. She waited through her 40s, convinced it was just around the corner, after the promotion, after the children grew, after the debt cleared. And one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, sitting in her kitchen with sunlight falling across the table, she realized she'd been living her entire life in a waiting room. The moment that changed her didn't arrive with trumpets or revelations. It came with a simple question from a friend. Are you happy right now? Not, will you be happy when? Not, were you happy before? Right now. She opened her mouth to answer and found herself listing conditions. I'll be happy when the kitchen is renovated, when my back stops hurting, when my daughter calls more often. The friend waited, then asked again, gentler this time. But right now, in this moment, sitting here, with warm tea and afternoon light, are you happy? Something cracked open. Because the truth was, in that exact moment, nothing was actually wrong. Her tea was warm. The light was beautiful. She was breathing easily. She was safe. The suffering she carried existed entirely in her thoughts about the past or anxieties about the future. But here, now, in this present moment, she had everything she needed to be at peace. This is where the Buddha's fifth mantra enters, not as a command, but as a recognition. This moment is a happy moment. Not, this moment should be happy. Not, this moment will be happy if. It simply is. Now, I know what might be rising in you right now. Perhaps resistance, perhaps skepticism, but my life is genuinely hard. You might be thinking, this isn't toxic positivity wrapped in Buddhist language, is it? And that's exactly the right question to ask. Let's be very clear about what this practice is and what it isn't. The Buddha never taught us to pretend our suffering doesn't exist. He didn't ask us to paste smiles over genuine pain or to spiritually bypass our difficulties. In fact, the first noble truth acknowledges that suffering is real. It exists. The Buddha saw it, named it, and spent his life teaching us how to transform it. What he discovered under the Bodhi tree wasn't that life contains no suffering. He discovered that we have the capacity to recognize happiness even in the midst of difficulty. That we possess conditions for peace right now, even when everything isn't perfect. Think of it this way. Imagine you're sitting in a room that has both a window and a door. Through the door, you can see difficulties, bills on the counter, responsibilities waiting, relationships that need tending. Those things are real. They exist. But through the window, you can see sky, clouds moving, a bird landing on a branch. That's also real. It also exists. We've trained ourselves to stare only at the door, to catalog everything that's wrong, everything that needs fixing, everything that's missing. The practice of this moment is a happy moment simply invites us to also look through the window, to recognize what's already here, already available, already offering us nourishment. The woman in the kitchen didn't suddenly have fewer problems after her friend's question. Her back still hurt. Her daughter still lived far away. The kitchen still needed renovation. But she stopped waiting for those things to resolve before allowing herself to touch the happiness that was available right then. The warmth of tea, the presence of a caring friend, the simple fact of being alive on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. So, what does this moment actually mean? Not the sweeping arc of your year or your life, not the accumulation of your past or the projection of your future. Just this breath, this sensation of air entering your body and leaving it again. This feeling of gravity holding you, this sound reaching your ears right now. When the Buddha taught about happiness, he pointed to something revolutionary. We don't need to create elaborate conditions to be at peace. We need to recognize the conditions that already exist. He said we need awareness of our body, and you have that right now. He said we need air to breathe, and you're breathing it. He said we need a path of practice, and you're walking it simply by being here, listening, opening yourself to these teachings. He said we need companions on the journey, and even now, thousands of people around the world are listening to these same words, practicing alongside you, though you've never met. These aren't small things. They're everything. Let's practice together right now, not later, not after you understand more. Now, bring your attention to your breathing without changing it. Don't make it deeper or slower or more spiritual. Just notice it exactly as it is. Feel the air entering through your nose or mouth. Feel your chest or belly gently rising. Now feel the natural pause at the top of the breath, and then the gentle release as you exhale. As you breathe in, silently recognize, I am aware of my body. As you breathe out, I release tension. Don't force this. Don't perform it. Just let it be a gentle noticing. One more breath like this. Breathing in, I feel alive. Breathing out, I smile to this life. Did you notice what just happened? For those few breaths, you weren't waiting for anything. You weren't rehearsing the past or planning the future. You were simply here, present, alive. And in that brief window, nothing was wrong. Nothing needed fixing. That's what this moment is a happy moment feels like. Now comes the revolutionary part. You can return to this anytime. Not just during meditation, not just in peaceful settings. While washing dishes, you can recognize this moment. While walking to your car, you can touch this aliveness. While waiting in line, while folding laundry, while answering emails, any moment can become a happy moment when you bring your full presence to it. The Buddha wasn't teaching us to manufacture artificial joy. He was teaching us to recognize the genuine peace that exists when we stop running from this moment towards some imagined better moment. This is why beginning anew doesn't require January 1st. You don't need the calendar to change. You don't need to wait for Monday, for the new moon, for when you feel more ready. Every single breath is a chance to begin again. Every moment you return to presence is a fresh start. The woman in the kitchen learned something that afternoon that changed the entire trajectory of her life. She learned that happiness isn't something that arrives when all conditions align perfectly. It's something that emerges when we align ourselves with the conditions already present. She started practicing the fifth mantra, the way you might practice a new language. Awkwardly at first. When she remembered to stop while drinking her morning coffee, she'd pause and whisper it. This moment is a happy moment. While pulling weeds in her garden, hands in soil, she'd recognize it. This moment is a happy moment. Even during difficult phone calls, she learned to find the tiny spaces between challenge, the moment she hung up, the breath she took, the window she looked through, and acknowledge, this moment, at least, is a happy moment. It didn't make her problems disappear. Her life didn't suddenly become easier, but she stopped living exclusively in the waiting room. She stopped postponing peace until some future version of her life materialized. She learned to touch joy right in the middle of her ordinary, imperfect, beautifully complicated existence. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught that we have enough conditions to be happy in the here and now. He wasn't minimizing suffering. He was pointing to our capacity to recognize peace even when everything hasn't been resolved. You have a body that breathes without you telling it to. You have eyes that translate light into images, ears that transform vibrations into meaning. You have a mind capable of awareness, of learning, of opening to these very words. Right now, wherever you are, you're likely safe enough to listen to this. You have 3 hours available to dedicate to your own healing and growth. These aren't trivial conditions. They're profound conditions. And yet we so easily overlook them, waiting instead for the big conditions to arrive. The perfect relationship, the ideal job, the resolved family dynamics, the healed body. We think happiness hides on the other side of achievement or acquisition. But the Buddha discovered it's been here all along, hidden only by our habit of looking past this moment toward the next one. So let's practice once more, right now, before we move forward. Take a breath and scan your immediate environment. What's one small thing that's okay right now? Maybe it's the temperature of the room. Maybe it's the softness of what you're sitting on. Maybe it's simply the fact that you're breathing easily, that your heart is beating without effort, that you're alive in this moment. Find that one thing and silently acknowledge it. This is a condition for happiness. Now find another and another. This is the practice. Not complicated, not requiring years of training, just this gentle attention to what's already available. When you practice recognizing happy moments throughout your day, something unexpected happens. The muscles of awareness grow stronger. You become more skilled at noticing nourishment, at touching peace, at remembering that life isn't only the problems you're solving, but also the 10,000 tiny gifts showing up constantly. And here's what makes this practice even more powerful. When you pronounce this mantra, even silently to yourself, you're not only nourishing yourself, the people around you feel it. Your presence becomes calmer. Your energy shifts from frantic future-seeking to easeful present dwelling. You become the kind of person others want to be near, because you're not radiating the anxiety of someone always reaching for the next moment. You're here, fully here, and that presence is contagious. This is how beginning anew actually works. Not through forcing yourself to become someone different, but through remembering to show up for who and where you already are. Now, this simple phrase, "This moment is a happy moment," opens a door to something even deeper. Because what makes it possible to recognize and sustain this happiness? What supports us in actually living this way, rather than just understanding it intellectually? The answer surprised me when I first learned it, and it might surprise you too. The Buddha taught that you're not just this physical body you see in the mirror. You actually have 3 additional bodies, and each one plays a crucial role in your capacity for peace and transformation. Let me show you what these 3 bodies are and how they make everything we're practicing possible. You are more than you think you are. Not in some abstract, metaphysical sense, but in a very practical, tangible way. The body you see in the mirror, the one that gets tired and hungry and needs rest, that's just one of your bodies. According to the Buddha's teaching, you actually have at least 3 other bodies, and understanding them changes everything about how you practice, how you heal, how you live. These aren't metaphors or poetic language. They're real aspects of who you are, as concrete as your hands and heart. And the beautiful thing, you already have them. You've always had them. We're just going to recognize them together. Let me tell you about a teacher who forgot she could understand. She'd been teaching high school English for 23 years, and somewhere around year 15, she started believing a story about herself. The story went like this: I've lost my patience. I used to be able to reach difficult students, but I can't anymore. I'm burned out. I don't have what it takes. She carried this story like a heavy coat, wearing it every day. When a student acted out, she'd think, "See, I can't handle this anymore." When a lesson fell flat, she'd confirm to herself, "I've lost my gift." She was preparing to quit, convinced that the capacity for understanding and compassion had simply drained out of her over the years. Then one afternoon, a student came to her crying. Not one of her favorites. Actually, a kid who'd been difficult all semester, resistant, dismissive. But something in his face cracked her open. Without thinking, without planning, she sat down and listened, really listened. And as he talked about his father's illness, about trying to work nights to help with bills, about feeling invisible and failing and terrified, she felt it. Understanding, deep understanding. Not the intellectual kind, but the kind that recognizes suffering, because you've suffered too. When he left her classroom that day, she sat very still, because she'd just discovered something shocking. The capacity for understanding hadn't left her. It had been there all along, waiting, like a seed buried under dry soil. It just needed the right conditions to sprout. This is what the Buddha called your Buddha body. Not something you have to earn or achieve or become worthy of. It's already there. Every single person carries within them the seed of understanding and the seed of love. This is your Buddha nature, your capacity to wake up, to see clearly, to respond with compassion. The teacher who forgot she could understand had simply stopped watering those seeds. She'd been watering other seeds instead. Frustration, exhaustion, self-criticism, and those seeds grew large and loud, drowning out the quieter seeds of patience and compassion. But the Buddha seeds never disappeared. They just needed attention needed watering, needed conditions to grow. Think about your own life for a moment. Can you remember a time when you understood someone deeply, when you saw past their difficult behavior to the suffering underneath? Can you recall a moment when you forgave someone, even someone who hurt you, because you could suddenly see the whole picture of their struggle? That was your Buddha body showing itself. That capacity didn't arrive from outside. It emerged from within you. It's always been there. And here's what makes this teaching so practical. Your Buddha body can grow. The seed can become a sprout, the sprout a plant, the plant a tree. Every time you choose understanding over judgment, every time you respond with compassion instead of reactivity, you're watering your Buddha body. You're making it stronger, more accessible, more present in your daily life. But how do you water these seeds? How do you actually grow your Buddha body? This is where your second body comes in. The teacher, after that afternoon with her student, started doing something different. She began arriving to school 15 minutes early just to sit in her car and breathe. 5 breaths with full attention before walking into the building. She started pausing between classes, just for 10 seconds, to feel her feet on the floor. When students frustrated her, she learned to take one conscious breath before responding. These weren't grand gestures. They were tiny practices, so small they seemed almost silly. But within months, everything shifted. Her patience returned. Her joy in teaching rekindled. Students started responding to her differently. What happened? She discovered her second body, the Dharma body. Your Dharma body is your practice. It's the collection of everything you do to cultivate mindfulness, to generate presence, to water the wholesome seeds and starve the unwholesome ones. When you breathe mindfully, even just one breath, with full awareness, you're building your Dharma body. When you walk from your car to your door and actually feel each step, instead of being lost in thought, you're strengthening your Dharma body. When you eat breakfast and actually taste your food, rather than scrolling through your phone, you're nourishing your Dharma body. And here's the revolutionary part. Your Dharma body goes everywhere with you. Someone can steal your car, your phone, your wallet, but no one can steal your practice. No one can take away your ability to return to your breath, to bring awareness to this moment, to choose presence over distraction. The teacher carried her Dharma body through the school hallways, into difficult parent meetings, home to her own family's challenges. It protected her, not like armor that keeps everything out, but like a root system that keeps a tree stable during storms. When she felt anger rising toward a disruptive student, her Dharma body gave her tools. Breathe, pause, look deeper. When she felt despair about the state of education, her Dharma body offered refuge. This moment, this breath, this one student in front of me right now. When she doubted herself, her Dharma body reminded her, You're practicing, you're growing, you're exactly where you need to be. This is why the Buddha said that having a Dharma body means you're a friend of the Buddha, a student of the Buddha, not because you worship him or follow him blindly, but because you're actually practicing what he discovered, that mindfulness, concentration, and insight are the nutrients that make the Buddha body grow. Your practice is your second body, and the more you practice, the stronger this body becomes. The more solid your Dharma body, the faster your Buddha body grows. They feed each other. But there's a challenge. The teacher discovered something difficult about 6 months into her renewed practice. There were days when she'd forget to breathe mindfully, weeks when the busyness swallowed her intentions. She'd slip back into reactivity, into autopilot, into the old patterns she thought she'd left behind. She felt discouraged until a friend asked her a simple question: "Are you trying to practice alone?" This brings us to the third body, and maybe the most important one for actually sustaining your practice over time. There's an old teaching from the Buddhist tradition about a tiger and a mountain. When a tiger leaves her mountain and wanders down to the lowlands, she becomes vulnerable. Hunters can track her. She loses her natural advantage. She becomes disoriented in unfamiliar territory. Eventually, she's caught. But when a tiger stays in her mountain home, she's powerful. She knows every path, every cave, every stream. She's supported by the environment itself. She thrives. For a practitioner, the mountain is the Sangha, and your Sangha body is your third body. Now, before you think this doesn't apply to you because you don't live near a Buddhist temple or meditation center, let me tell you what Sangha really means. Sangha is any community of people committed to waking up. It's the environment that supports your practice. It's the people who remind you what you've forgotten, who practice alongside you, who show you through their own efforts that transformation is possible. The teacher found her Sangha in unexpected places. One colleague who also practiced mindfulness. They started having tea together once a week, sharing what they were learning. That was Sangha, a small online group that met Sunday mornings to meditate together over video call. 5 people, scattered across different cities, breathing together in silence. That was Sangha. Even her teenagers at home, when she explained what she was practicing and invited them to try one mindful meal together each week. That became Sangha too. Your Sangha body doesn't require a monastery or a Dharma hall. It requires intentionality. It requires finding or creating spaces where people support each other's awakening rather than each other's suffering. And here's why this matters so deeply. When you practice alone, you rely entirely on your own willpower and memory. But when you practice with a Sangha, you're held by collective energy. On days when you forget to breathe mindfully, someone else in your Sangha is remembering. When your practice feels dry and difficult, you can lean on the steadiness of others who are walking this path beside you. The Buddha said the smallest Sangha is 4 people. 5 is better. More is wonderful. But even just finding one other person who shares this intention, to live more mindfully, to practice presence, to cultivate peace, that's the beginning of your Sangha body. And if you can't find a Sangha right where you are, you can be the one who starts it. Invite a friend to walk mindfully with you once a week. Suggest to your partner that you try eating one meal together without phones or television. Join an online meditation group. Even listening to teachings like this one, knowing that thousands of others are doing the same practice, breathing the same way, opening to the same insights. This is Sangha. You're not alone right now. You're part of a larger body of practitioners scattered across the world, all of you turning toward peace, toward presence, toward beginning anew. Now here's where these 3 bodies come together in a way that changes everything. Your Buddha body, your capacity for understanding and love, needs nourishment to grow. Your Dharma body, your practice, provides that nourishment, and your Sangha body, your community, creates the environment where your Dharma body can stay strong and consistent. They're not separate, they're intimately connected, each one supporting the others. When your Sangha is strong, your practice becomes easier and more joyful. You show up to meditate not because you're forcing yourself, but because you're meeting friends who are also showing up. When your practice is solid, your Buddha body grows naturally, understanding deepens, compassion flows more easily, patience becomes your default rather than your struggle. And when your Buddha body is strong, you become a gift to your Sangha. Your presence nourishes others. Your steadiness helps stabilize the community. Your growth inspires others to believe in their own capacity to transform. The teacher who forgot she could understand eventually became known in her school as the teacher students sought out when they were struggling, not because she became perfect or enlightened, but because she'd grown these 3 bodies. Her Buddha body was strong enough to hold space for suffering without being destroyed by it. Her Dharma body gave her tools to stay present even in difficulty. Her Sangha body connected her to others who reminded her, on hard days, why this practice mattered. She didn't do anything extraordinary. She just watered her seeds. She practiced simple things, breathing, walking, listening, with consistency. She found a few people to practice alongside. And slowly, gradually, everything transformed. This is what's available to you right now as you begin anew. You don't need to build these 3 bodies from scratch. You just need to recognize them, tend them, let them grow. Your Buddha body is already present. Think of one time you understood someone deeply, and you'll feel it there, that seed, waiting to be watered. Your Dharma body is already forming. Every mindful breath you've taken in the last hour has been strengthening it. Your Sangha body is already emerging. Everyone listening to this right now is part of your wider community of practice, even if you never meet face to face. These three bodies are your foundation. They're what make beginning anew, not just a nice idea, but an actual lived reality. They're what allow you to sustain peace, not just for a day or a week, but as a way of being in the world. And now that you know you have these three bodies, we can explore the actual practice of beginning anew, the 3-day journey that transforms how you relate to yourself, to the people you love, and even to those who've caused you suffering. But this practice isn't random. It's built specifically to strengthen all three of your bodies at once. Let me show you how. There was a family who almost fell apart in December. Not from anything dramatic, no betrayal, no crisis, no single breaking point. Just the slow erosion that happens when people stop truly seeing each other. The father worked long hours and brought his stress home like a coat he forgot to take off. The mother felt invisible, her contributions to the household unnoticed, her fatigue unacknowledged. The teenage daughter moved through the house like a ghost, present but unreachable. They ate dinner together, but weren't really together. They lived in the same space, but inhabited separate worlds. And on December 28th, after another silent meal, the mother said something that stopped everyone. "I don't think we know each other anymore." The father's first impulse was to defend, to explain, to make it not true. But he looked at his daughter and realized he couldn't name one thing that currently brought her joy. He looked at his wife and couldn't remember the last time he'd really asked how she was. He looked at himself in the reflection of the window and saw someone who'd forgotten how to be present. That night, the mother suggested something she'd learned about, a Buddhist practice called beginning anew. 3 days of intentional reconnection. 3 days of looking honestly at what had been neglected, what needed tending, what wanted to heal. The father was skeptical. The daughter was resistant. But something in the mother's voice, not demanding, just hoping, made them agree to try. What happened over those 3 days didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open. By New Year's Day, they were speaking differently, listening differently, seeing each other again. The daughter described it later as remembering we actually like each other. This practice of beginning anew isn't magic, but it is transformative. And it works not because it's complicated, but because it's structured in a way that builds momentum, that moves you through the layers of reconnection systematically and safely. So why 3 days? You might think it's arbitrary, just a nice round number. But there's wisdom in this structure. The first day focuses inward, on reconciling with yourself. You need this foundation. You can't genuinely offer loving kindness to others if you're at war with yourself. You can't extend compassion outward if you haven't first learned to recognize it inward. The second day expands to those closest to you, your beloved ones, your family, the people whose happiness matters deeply to you. Once you've practiced loving kindness toward yourself, extending it to those you already love becomes more natural, more genuine. You're not bypassing your own needs to care for others. You're overflowing from your own fullness. The third day asks for the deepest practice, reconciling with difficulty, with those who've caused you pain, with situations that feel unresolvable. This only becomes possible after the first 2 days. You need the strength you've built, the compassion you've cultivated, the foundation you've established. 3 days builds momentum. Each day prepares you for the next. It's like learning to swim. You start in shallow water, then gradually move deeper as your confidence grows. And here's something important. This isn't a New Year's exclusive practice. Yes, the turning of the calendar provides a natural threshold, a built-in sense of fresh starts and new possibilities. The family practiced it during those last days of December and first day of January because that timing felt right, felt charged with potential. But the practice doesn't belong only to that particular week. You can choose any 3 days. 3 days after a difficult conversation that needs healing. 3 days at the start of a new season. 3 days when you simply feel called to begin again. The practice remains powerful whenever you engage it because the power isn't in the dates on the calendar. It's in your intention to stop, to look honestly, to reconnect. Some people practice this quarterly, marking the seasons with intentional renewal. Some practice it after every major conflict or life transition. Some return to it whenever they notice they've drifted from themselves or from those they love. The structure provides safety. The timing provides flexibility. Now, I know something might be rising in you right now. A voice that says, "What if I'm not ready?" Or maybe, "What if I try this and it doesn't work?" Or perhaps, "What if digging into this just makes things worse?" Let me speak directly to those fears, because they're valid, they're real, and they're exactly what the Buddha would want us to acknowledge before beginning. First, you don't have to be ready. Readiness is overrated. If we waited until we felt completely ready to practice, to heal, to begin anew, most of us would wait forever. The practice itself creates readiness. You become ready by beginning, not by preparing endlessly to begin. The family who almost fell apart, none of them felt ready. The father thought it would be awkward and forced. The daughter thought it would be performative and fake. The mother, who suggested it, was terrified it wouldn't work, and she'd have to face that they were truly beyond repair. But they started anyway, shakily, imperfectly, and the practice held them. Second, this practice is designed with safety built in. You're not asked to dive into the deepest waters on day one. You begin with yourself, in private, at your own pace. If day one feels like enough, you stop there. If day two brings up too much, you pause, you breathe, you return when you're ready. Nothing about this practice demands you override your own wisdom about what you can hold. The structure is a container, not a cage. It gives you a path to follow but doesn't dictate your pace. It offers guidance but respects your autonomy. And third, making things worse by looking honestly is actually quite rare. What feels like making things worse is usually just making things conscious. Bringing awareness to suffering that was already there but ignored. Acknowledging distance that already existed but went unspoken. The fear isn't really that the practice will create problems. The fear is that the practice will reveal problems that are already present. And yes, that revelation can feel destabilizing at first, but it's also the beginning of genuine healing. The mother in our story told me later that the scariest moment was suggesting the practice at all, because once she named that they'd lost connection, she couldn't unname it. But that naming, that acknowledgement, became the doorway to reconnection. So as we prepare to walk through these 3 days together, I want you to know you're safe here. This practice has been refined over thousands of years by people who understood suffering deeply and who developed these methods as medicine, not as torture. The Buddha wasn't interested in making people feel worse. He was interested in liberation, in freedom, in the cessation of suffering. Everything he taught moves in that direction. Here's what these 3 days look like from above, before we dive into each one. Day 1 is reconciliation with yourself. You'll practice looking at your own mind, recognizing both the wholesome and unwholesome seeds within you, and learning how to work skillfully with both. You'll direct loving kindness toward yourself systematically, line by line, meeting yourself with the compassion you deserve. This day is private, internal, just between you and you. Day 2 is reconciliation with your beloved ones. You'll practice looking deeply at someone you love, seeing them clearly, understanding how to support them better, recognizing where you might have caused harm without meaning to. You'll direct loving kindness toward them, and you might even communicate differently with them, more honestly, more tenderly, more presently. This day extends your practice outward, but keeps it in the realm of existing love. Day 3 is reconciliation with difficulty. This is the advanced practice, the one that asks the most of you. You'll look at someone or something that has caused you suffering, and you'll practice finding understanding, finding peace, finding freedom from the prison of resentment. This day is optional if it feels too soon, but if you're ready, it offers profound liberation. Each day includes several practices: looking deeply, loving kindness, meditation, and touching the earth to ground yourself in connection to ancestors, land, and life itself. We'll walk through each practice together, step by step, with plenty of space for you to pause, to breathe, to integrate. The family practiced these 3 days mostly in silence with each other. They'd gather in the living room, each person doing their own internal work, just being together in the practice. Sometimes the daughter would cry quietly, and her mother would just sit closer, not asking, just being present. Sometimes the father would step outside and walk in circles around the yard, working through something he couldn't name. And on the evening of day 3, they sat together and shared one thing each person had discovered. Just one thing. The daughter said, "I discovered I'm angrier than I thought, and that's okay." The mother said, "I discovered I still have hope." The father said, "I discovered I've been afraid of failing you both, and that fear made me disappear." Those weren't complete healings. They were beginnings. But beginnings are everything. So we're going to begin now, you and I, with day 1. With the hardest person to love, the one you've probably been waiting to love until you became more worthy, more accomplished, more healed. We're going to start with you. And I need to be honest with you about something. This might feel uncomfortable at first. Not because it's wrong, but because we're so unaccustomed to directing genuine tenderness toward ourselves. We've been trained to be harsh inner critics, to notice everything that's wrong, to withhold kindness until we've earned it through perfection. This practice asks something different, something revolutionary. It asks you to offer yourself love, not because you've earned it, but because you're alive, because you're here, because you're trying. Let's discover together what happens when you finally, genuinely, direct loving kindness toward the one person who needs it most. Yourself. There was a man who couldn't look in the mirror. Not literally. He brushed his teeth, combed his hair, checked his appearance before leaving the house. But he never really looked, never met his own eyes, never held his own gaze for more than a second before glancing away. He was 52 years old when someone finally asked him why. It happened during a meditation retreat in a small group sharing circle. Someone mentioned practicing loving kindness meditation while looking in a mirror, and his body recoiled visibly. The teacher noticed and gently asked, "What comes up for you around mirrors?" He tried to laugh it off. "I just don't like looking at myself, that's all." But the teacher waited, and in that patient silence, something cracked. "I don't like what I see," he finally said. "I see all my failures, all the ways I've disappointed people, all the things I should have done differently. I see someone who's not enough and probably never will be." The teacher nodded slowly, then said something that stunned him. "You've been so busy being your own harshest critic that you've forgotten to be your own friend." This is where day 1 of beginning anew starts, with the revolutionary recognition that you deserve your own kindness. Not after you've fixed everything that's wrong, not once you've become the person you think you should be. Right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. And I need to be clear about something before we go further. This isn't selfish. Our culture has trained us to believe that caring for ourselves is somehow taking away from others. That self-compassion is self-indulgence, that loving ourselves means we're narcissistic or self-absorbed. But the Buddha taught something radically different. He said you cannot authentically offer to others what you haven't first offered to yourself. You cannot give from an empty cup. You cannot extend genuine compassion to another person's suffering if you're drowning in your own unacknowledged pain. Self-love, in the Buddhist sense, isn't about ego or vanity or putting yourself above others. It's about recognizing that you too are worthy of the compassion you so readily offer everyone else. It's about understanding that healing yourself is not separate from healing the world. It's the essential first step. The man who couldn't look in the mirror spent the next 3 days of that retreat practicing something that felt almost impossibly difficult. He practiced directing loving kindness toward himself. And what he discovered changed the entire trajectory of his life. Let me walk you through this practice the way it was taught to him, the way it's been taught for thousands of years, line by line, with space for each phrase to land. The practice begins with these words: "May I be peaceful and light in body and mind." When you first hear this phrase, it might seem simple, almost too simple. But let's break it open and see what's really being offered here. Peaceful in body means your physical form isn't carrying unnecessary tension. Right now, as you listen, notice your shoulders. Are they creeping up toward your ears? Notice your jaw. Are you clenching? Notice your breath. Is it shallow and tight, or deep and easy? Most of us carry so much tension, we've stopped noticing it. It's become our baseline. To be peaceful in body is to release that habitual holding, that armor we've built from years of bracing against life. Light in body doesn't mean weighing less. It means not feeling burdened by your physical existence, not feeling like your body is an enemy or a problem to solve. It means moving through the world without the heaviness of self-criticism about how you look, how you age, how you compare to others. Peaceful in mind means the constant churning can settle. The relentless planning, reviewing, worrying, judging, it can quiet. Not forever, not perfectly, but enough that you can hear yourself think, enough that you can rest. Light in mind means your thoughts don't feel like a burden you're condemned to carry. It means the stories you tell yourself about your inadequacy, your failures, your unworthiness, they lose their grip. They become just thoughts, not truth. Let's practice this right now, together. Take a breath and silently repeat, "May I be peaceful and light in body and mind." Say it again, slower this time, meaning it. May I be peaceful and light in body and mind. Notice what comes up. Does it feel awkward? False? Like you don't deserve it? The man from the retreat said it felt like lying at first, like he was pretending to wish himself well, when actually he was full of self-criticism and disappointment. But the teacher told him something important. You're not lying. You're planting seeds. Keep watering them. The next line goes deeper. May I be safe and free from accidents. This one surprised me when I first practiced it, because it felt almost childlike in its simplicity. But what it's really addressing is the fundamental human need for safety, not just physical safety, but emotional and spiritual safety too. Free from accidents doesn't just mean avoiding car crashes or falls. It means being protected from the violence we inflict on ourselves through destructive habits, harsh self-talk, and choices that harm us. When you say, "May I be safe," you're asking for protection from your own worst impulses, from the part of you that sabotages your well-being, from the voice that says, "You don't deserve good things," from the patterns that keep you stuck in suffering. The Buddha taught that many accidents aren't random. They're drawn to us by our own state of mind. When we're caught in anger, we make careless choices. When we're drowning in despair, we stop protecting ourselves. When we're driven by craving, we take risks that endanger us. So wishing yourself safety is wishing yourself mindfulness. Wishing yourself protection is wishing yourself the clarity to make choices that honor your life. Let's practice. May I be safe and free from accidents. Again, may I be safe and free from accidents. Feel the tenderness in that wish. You're saying to yourself, I want you to be okay. I want you protected. Your safety matters to me. The third line addresses what often causes us the most suffering. May I be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. This is where the practice gets real. The man at the retreat broke down when he reached this line, because he wasn't just occasionally angry, he was furious. Furious at himself for his mistakes, furious at others for their judgments, furious at life for not turning out the way he'd hoped. And beneath the anger was a swamp of other unwholesome states: envy, resentment, fear, shame, despair, things he'd never named, never acknowledged, just carried like toxic waste inside him. Here's what makes this line so powerful. It names these states without condemning you for having them. The Buddha didn't say anger makes you a bad person. He said, anger makes you suffer. He didn't say you should be ashamed of your unwholesome mental states. He said they're obstacles to your peace, and you deserve to be free of them. This is radical self-compassion. Not, I shouldn't feel angry, which just creates more suffering. But, I want to be free from anger because I deserve peace. Unwholesome states include all the mental formations that disturb your tranquility: jealousy when someone else succeeds, resentment when you're overlooked, anxiety about the future, regret about the past. These aren't moral failures. They're human experiences that cause you pain, and you're worthy of freedom from that pain. Practice with me. May I be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. Once more, with full intention, may I be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. Notice if any resistance arises. Sometimes we're so identified with our anger or our anxiety that wishing them away feels like wishing ourselves away. But you are not your anger. You are the awareness that can observe anger, arising and passing. Now we come to what the man called the game changer. May I know how to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. This line broke him open completely, because he realized he'd been looking at himself with the eyes of judgment his entire life. Eyes that catalogued every flaw, every mistake, every way he fell short. Eyes that saw him as a problem to be fixed, rather than a person to be understood. The Buddha taught that understanding and compassion are the antidotes to suffering. But we rarely, almost never, turn those antidotes toward ourselves. To look at yourself with understanding means asking, why am I like this? Without judgment. What conditions created this pattern? What suffering led to this behavior? What was I trying to protect when I developed this habit? The man started asking these questions about the parts of himself he hated most. His tendency to withdraw when things got hard. He saw it came from a childhood where speaking up meant punishment. His perfectionism that made him impossible to please. He saw it developed as a survival strategy in a home where love felt conditional. Understanding doesn't excuse harm, but it transforms how you relate to yourself. You stop being an enemy and become someone worthy of care. Compassion means recognizing, I am suffering and I deserve relief from this suffering. Not, I should be suffering less, or others have it worse, so I shouldn't complain. Just the simple radical acknowledgement, I hurt, and that matters. Practice this transformative line. May I know how to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. Again, letting it sink deeper. May I know how to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. The next line is a treasure hunt. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. We're so trained to notice what's wrong that we become blind to what's right. We can list our flaws instantly, but struggle to name our strengths. We remember our failures in vivid detail, but forget our successes within days. But the Buddha taught that everyone has seeds of joy and happiness within them, seeds of love, of generosity, of courage, of wisdom. They're there even when we can't see them, even when they've gone unwatered for years. This line asks you to become a treasure hunter in your own consciousness, to actively look for what's good in you, what's strong, what's beautiful. not to inflate your ego, but to remember your wholeness. Think right now of one time you were kind when you could have been cruel. One moment you chose patience when anger was easier. One instance when you helped someone, even though no one was watching. That's a seed of joy in you. That's proof of your Buddha nature. And when you recognize it, when you touch it with awareness, it grows stronger. Practice this invitation. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. Feel the shift from criticism to appreciation. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. The sixth line gives you practical permission. May I learn how to nourish myself with joy each day. Not may joy randomly arrive, but may I learn how to nourish myself. This puts agency back in your hands. Nourishing yourself with joy doesn't require dramatic life changes. It means learning to pause and actually taste your morning coffee, to step outside and feel sun on your face for 30 seconds, to call a friend who makes you laugh, to listen to a song that lifts your spirit, to notice one beautiful thing on your way to work. These aren't luxuries. They're essential nutrients for your Buddha body. And you're giving yourself permission to actively seek them out, to prioritize them, to build your days around them, instead of only around obligations. Try it. May I learn how to nourish myself with joy each day. Make it a commitment. May I learn how to nourish myself with joy each day. The seventh line builds your foundation. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. Fresh means not weighed down by the past, not defined by your mistakes, not imprisoned by old identities that no longer fit. Fresh means you can begin anew in any moment, can reinvent yourself, can let go of who you were, and embrace who you're becoming. Solid means having a stable ground to stand on, not rigid, but rooted. Solid means you don't blow over in every storm of emotion or opinion. You have a practice that anchors you, a sense of self that doesn't crumble under pressure. Free means not trapped by craving or aversion, not controlled by circumstances or other people's expectations. Free means you can choose your responses instead of being yanked around by reactions. Free means you belong to yourself. These three qualities, fresh, solid, and free, create the foundation for genuine happiness. Without solidity, you're too unstable for peace. Without freshness, you're stuck in old suffering. Without freedom, you're at the mercy of conditions. Practice anchoring yourself. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. Feel the strength in these words. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. The final line protects you from two common traps. May I not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. Indifference is when you stop caring altogether, when you numb out, shut down, go through life on autopilot. The Buddha said this isn't peace, it's avoidance. True peace includes caring deeply while remaining unshaken. Attachment is when you cling so tightly to people, outcomes, or identities that you suffer when they change, and everything changes. Aversion is when you spend your energy pushing away what you dislike, creating as much suffering in the resistance as in the thing itself. The middle way that the Buddha taught walks between these extremes. You care without clinging. You have preferences without being destroyed when they're not met. You're engaged with life but not imprisoned by it. Practice this balance. May I not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. Feel the wisdom of the middle path. May I not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. Now, woven into this practice of directing loving kindness toward yourself is another layer, the Buddha's teaching on right diligence. Think of your mind as a garden. Some seeds produce flowers and fruit. These are the wholesome mental states like compassion, joy, patience, wisdom. Other seeds produce weeds that choke out everything else. These are the unwholesome states like hatred, greed, delusion. The Buddha gave us 4 practices for tending this garden. First, the good seeds that haven't sprouted yet, water them. If you have capacity for courage, but it's been dormant, create conditions for it to emerge. If you have seeds of generosity, but they're buried, look for small ways to give. Don't wait for these qualities to show up spontaneously. Actively cultivate them. Second, the good seeds that are already growing, keep them alive. When you notice yourself being patient, acknowledge it. When compassion arises, appreciate it. When you choose wisdom over reactivity, celebrate that choice. What you pay attention to grows stronger. Third, the unwholesome seeds that are sleeping, let them sleep. You have seeds of violence, of cruelty, of despair in you. Everyone does. But you don't need to water them. The Buddha taught us to be very careful about what we consume, what media we watch, what conversations we engage, what thoughts we rehearse. If something waters your seeds of fear or anger or addiction, stop consuming it. Fourth, the unwholesome seeds that have already sprouted, change the CD. This is what the man at the retreat learned to do with his self-hatred. When that familiar voice would start its litany of criticism, he practiced stopping it midstream and intentionally inviting in a different voice, the voice of his loving kindness practice. like switching from harsh music to gentle music, like changing channels from a horror show to something nourishing. He couldn't always stop the unwholesome seeds from arising, but he could stop feeding them once they appeared. Let's do the full practice now, all together, as a guided meditation. Find a comfortable position and close your eyes if that feels safe. Take 3 deep breaths, releasing tension with each exhale. Now, with your full attention, repeat these phrases silently, letting each one sink into you like rain into soil. May I be peaceful and light in body and mind. May I be safe and free from accidents. May I be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. May I know how to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. May I learn how to nourish myself with joy each day. May I be able to live fresh, solid, and free. May I not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. Take one more deep breath. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. You've just done something revolutionary. You've offered yourself the loving kindness you've been waiting for someone else to give you. You've planted seeds that will grow stronger each time you return to this practice. The man who couldn't look in the mirror practiced these phrases every morning for 3 months. And one day, he found himself pausing in front of the bathroom mirror after brushing his teeth. He met his own eyes and held the gaze. What he saw wasn't perfection. He saw someone tired, someone aging, someone carrying regrets. But he also saw someone trying, someone practicing, someone worthy of his own compassion. And for the first time in decades, he smiled at himself. Not a performance smile, but a genuine expression of friendliness toward the person looking back at him. That's what day 1 offers you, the possibility of becoming your own friend instead of your own enemy. Tomorrow, we'll extend this loving kindness outward to those you love. But today, this first day, is just for you. Just for the revolutionary act of offering yourself what you deserve. Peace, safety, freedom from suffering, your own understanding eyes, your own compassionate heart. Rest in that for now. And when you're ready, we'll move together into day 2, where love expands from one to many. There was a couple who lived together for 7 years and slowly became strangers. Not through any dramatic event or betrayal. Just the gradual erosion that happens when 2 people stop truly seeing each other. They still said, "I love you," at the end of phone calls. They still slept in the same bed, paid bills together, made plans for the weekend. But somewhere along the way, they'd stopped looking into each other's eyes with curiosity, stopped asking real questions and waiting for real answers. They knew each other's schedules, but had forgotten each other's dreams. The woman realized it one evening when her partner came home stressed from work. She asked, "How was your day?" out of habit, already reaching for her phone. He said, "Fine," and disappeared into the bedroom. And she suddenly understood that neither of them had told the truth in that exchange. His day wasn't fine. She could see it in his shoulders, in the tightness around his mouth. And she didn't actually want to know how his day was. She was just performing the ritual of concern without the substance of it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay there thinking about how much she loved this man and how little she'd shown it lately. How her love had become a background assumption rather than an active practice. How she'd stopped tending to what they'd built together, as if love could survive on its own without attention, without care, without the daily choice to really see and be seen. This is the strange paradox of intimate relationships. We often hurt the ones we love most, not through malice, but through forgetting. Forgetting to pause and really listen. Forgetting to ask the deeper questions. Forgetting that our beloved ones suffer, struggle, carry weights we don't see because we've stopped looking. The Buddha taught that this forgetting is a form of suffering too. And day 2 of beginning anew is about remembering, about bringing the same loving attention you offered yourself yesterday and extending it outward to those whose happiness is intertwined with your own. But before we practice directing loving kindness toward our beloved ones, we need to prepare. We need to look deeply, to see clearly, to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface of our relationships. The first preparation practice is simple but profound. Sit quietly and bring to mind someone you love. Not someone you have a complicated relationship with. We'll get to that tomorrow. Today, choose someone whose happiness genuinely matters to you. A partner, a parent, a child, a close friend. Someone you care about deeply. Now, with them in your mind, ask yourself, what do I actually know about their life right now? Not their schedule or their responsibilities, but their inner life. What brings them joy these days? What worries keep them awake? What dreams have they set aside? What small kindness would mean the world to them? The woman realized, sitting with these questions, that she'd been living with assumptions. She assumed her partner was fine because he said he was fine. She assumed his needs were being met because he hadn't complained. But when she actually looked deeply, she saw someone who was lonely, even in her presence. Someone who'd stopped sharing his struggles because it seemed like she didn't have space to hold them. This is the second preparation practice, looking for the roots of suffering in your beloved one. Everyone suffers, even the people who seem to have everything together, even the people who smile and say they're fine. But we can't help them transform their suffering if we don't know it exists. The Buddha taught that suffering always has roots. It doesn't arise from nowhere. Maybe your beloved one had a difficult childhood that shaped how they relate to conflict. Maybe they're carrying grief they haven't processed. Maybe they feel invisible, unappreciated, taken for granted. Maybe they're scared of something they haven't named. When you look deeply with the intention to understand rather than to judge, you begin to see these roots, and seeing them changes everything. Compassion becomes natural, not forced. The third preparation practice asks, how can I help them in this coming year? Not, how can I fix them? Or, how can I make them more like I want them to be? But genuinely, what would support their well-being? What would help them flourish? What do they need that I could offer? Sometimes it's practical, taking on a task that burdens them, creating space for them to rest, surprising them with something they've been wanting. Sometimes it's emotional, listening more deeply, acknowledging their efforts, showing appreciation more often. Sometimes it's simply presence, being truly with them instead of being physically near them while mentally elsewhere. The woman made a list. Stop checking my phone during dinner. Ask about his projects and really listen to the answers. Touch him affectionately without it needing to lead anywhere. Tell him specifically what I appreciate about him instead of just saying, I love you on autopilot. Small things, but revolutionary in their specificity. Now comes the most vulnerable preparation practice, and this one requires tremendous courage. You need to ask yourself, do I have a habit energy that hurts them? We all have habit energies, automatic patterns we fall into without thinking. The way we respond when we're tired or stressed or feeling defensive. The things we say that land like small cuts, even though we don't mean them that way. The ways we withdraw or become cold or turn irritable without realizing the impact. The woman knew hers immediately when she asked herself this question. When she felt overwhelmed, she became sharp and dismissive. She'd cut conversations short, wave off her partner's concerns as if they were trivial, make him feel like he was bothering her just by existing. She'd never meant to hurt him, but she had, repeatedly, through this unconscious pattern. Here's the brave part. Actually asking your beloved one about this. Not defensively, not while explaining why you do it, not while immediately apologizing and promising to change. Just asking, sincerely, darling, do I have a habit energy that makes you unhappy? Please tell me, so I can be more aware of it, so I can practice with it. This question, asked with genuine openness, can transform a relationship. It says, your experience of me matters more than my image of myself. I'm willing to see my blind spots. I care enough to change. For some of you, this might feel too vulnerable right now. That's okay. You can practice this internally first, becoming aware of your own patterns before asking others to name them. Another powerful practice is writing a letter to your beloved one that you may or may not send. The writing itself is the practice. It helps clarify what you want to express, what you've been holding back, what needs to be said. You might write, "I've realized I've been taking you for granted. I see now how much you do that I don't acknowledge. I want you to know that I notice, that I'm grateful, that your presence in my life is a gift I've forgotten to unwrap lately." Or, "I'm sorry for the ways I've been distant. I've been so caught up in my own stress that I haven't made space for yours. I'm practicing coming back, being more present, remembering that we're partners in this life." Or, "I love you, and I want to love you better. Tell me what that looks like for you. Tell me what you need that you're not getting. I'm listening now in a way I haven't been." The woman wrote her letter late that night, tears falling onto the page. She didn't send it the next morning. Instead, she read it to him that evening, her voice shaking, her heart open. Now let's practice the loving kindness meditation directed toward your beloved one. The structure mirrors what you practiced yesterday, but notice what shifts when you change I to he or she or they. Notice how it feels to hold someone else in your awareness with this tender intention. Bring your beloved one clearly into your mind. See their face, remember their voice, feel your love for them. Now silently offer these phrases to them. May you be peaceful and light in body and mind. Feel what you're wishing for them, that their shoulders would soften, that their mind would quiet, that they'd feel ease in their physical form and clarity in their thoughts. May you be safe and free from accidents. Wish them protection from harm, from their own destructive patterns, from the violence of the world and the harshness they might direct at themselves. May you be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. You know the weight of these states yourself now, from yesterday's practice. Wish your beloved one freedom from that same weight. May you know how to look at yourself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. This might be the most powerful phrase you can offer another person, the wish that they'd treat themselves with the kindness you wish you could give them. May you be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in yourself. Wish them the capacity to see their own goodness, their own strengths, their own Buddha nature. May you learn how to nourish yourself with joy each day, not dependent on you for their happiness, but empowered to cultivate their own well-being. May you be able to live fresh, solid, and free. Wish them resilience, flexibility, and liberation from whatever imprisons them. May you not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. Wish them the balance you're learning to cultivate in yourself. The woman practiced this meditation for her partner every morning for a week before she spoke to him about what she'd been learning. And something unexpected happened. She started noticing him differently. The way he always made coffee for both of them, even on rushed mornings. The way he texted to check if she needed anything from the store. The way he'd squeeze her hand while they watched television. A small gesture of connection she'd stopped registering. Practicing loving kindness toward him opened her eyes to the love he was already offering her that she'd been too distracted to receive. This brings us to what some call the 5 mantras for relationships. Phrases you can practice, saying out loud to deepen connection. The first, darling, I'm here for you. This isn't just physical presence, but full attention. Putting down your phone, turning toward them, making eye contact, offering the gift of your undivided awareness. The second, darling, I know you're there, and I'm so happy. This is recognition, seeing them, acknowledging their presence as something that brings you joy. Not taking them for granted, but actively appreciating that they exist and that you get to share life with them. The third, darling, I know you're suffering, and I'm here for you. This is empathy, without trying to fix, presence, without needing to solve, just witnessing, holding space, being with them in their difficulty. The fourth, darling, I'm suffering, please help. This is vulnerability, being honest about your own struggle, instead of pretending you're fine or expecting them to notice without you speaking. The fifth, darling, this is a happy moment. This is what we practiced on day 1, now shared, the capacity to pause together and recognize the goodness that exists right now in this ordinary moment of being together. One evening, the woman came home and found her partner cooking dinner. Instead of just thanking him and moving on to the next thing, she stopped. She walked up behind him, put her hand on his shoulder, and said, "Darling, I know you're here, and I'm so happy." He turned, surprised, and she saw his face soften. "I've missed you," he said quietly. "I've been here the whole time," she said. "I know," he replied, "but you haven't been here." That's the moment that bridges everything. Not a dramatic gesture, but genuine connection that closes the distance we've allowed to grow. So how do you practice this today, right now, before day 2 ends? If your beloved one is accessible, do one small thing differently. If you usually give a quick kiss goodbye, pause for 5 seconds of actual presence. If you usually ask, "How was your day?" while doing something else, put everything down, make eye contact, and wait for the real answer. If you usually keep your appreciation in your head, speak it out loud. One specific thing you noticed and valued. If they're not physically near you, you can still practice. Send them a message that isn't practical or logistical, but purely connective. "I was thinking about you and wanted you to know "I'm grateful you're in my life." Or call them not to discuss plans, but just to hear their voice, to ask a real question, to offer real attention. Or if contact feels too vulnerable right now, sit quietly and do the loving kindness meditation for them. Send them that energy silently. Let it change how you hold them in your heart. The couple who'd become strangers didn't transform overnight, but the woman kept practicing the daily meditation, the intentional presence, the active choice to see him clearly rather than through the fog of habit and assumption. Her partner noticed the shift and began meeting her halfway, asking his own questions, offering his own attention. 6 months into this practice, they found themselves sitting on their porch one evening, just being together in comfortable silence. "We're not perfect," she said suddenly. "We still have hard days, but we're not strangers anymore. We're learning how to be truly with each other again." He nodded, squeezing her hand. "It feels like coming home." Day 2 asks you to come home to your beloved ones, to show up fully, to see clearly, to love actively rather than passively. This feels good, doesn't it? This practice of extending compassion to those you already love. But tomorrow, day 3, asks something significantly harder. Tomorrow, we'll practice directing loving kindness toward those who've caused us suffering, toward the people we'd rather not think about, the situations we'd rather not touch, the wounds we've been protecting for years. It's the most advanced practice, and also potentially the most liberating. Rest in today's practice for now. Let the love for your beloved ones settle into you. Tomorrow we'll discover whether you're ready to love even wider. This is the practice that sounds impossible until you understand what it actually is. Day 3 isn't about becoming a doormat or pretending harm didn't happen, or spiritually bypassing your legitimate pain. It's not about letting toxic people back into your life, or excusing abuse, or convincing yourself that everything happens for a reason. Let me be absolutely clear from the beginning. This practice is about your freedom, not their redemption. It's about releasing yourself from the prison of resentment that keeps you chained to your suffering long after the original harm occurred. It's about recognizing that carrying hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The Buddha taught this not because he was naive about human cruelty, but because he understood something profound about how suffering works. He understood that anger and resentment don't punish the person who harmed you. They punish you. There was a woman who carried rage toward her father for 37 years. He'd been an alcoholic who alternated between absence and violence. He missed her school plays, forgot her birthdays, said things that cut deep and left scars she could still feel decades later. When she was 16, she left home and promised herself she'd never forgive him. And she kept that promise. She cut all contact, refused to attend family gatherings where he might be present, and built a wall so high that nothing could get through. Not his few attempts at apology, not her mother's pleas for reconciliation, not even her own children's questions about their grandfather. The rage became part of her identity. It was the fuel that drove her to build a different kind of life, to become the opposite of everything he was. She told herself the anger protected her, kept her strong, reminded her never to accept treatment like that again. But somewhere in her 50s, she began to notice something. The rage was eating her alive. She'd snap at her husband over minor things, reliving her father's temper in her own responses. She'd panic when her own children struggled, terrified they'd repeat her father's patterns. She couldn't hear certain songs or smell certain things without being yanked back into memories that made her body tight with fury. He'd been gone from her life for decades, but he still controlled her every single day. A friend who practiced Buddhism suggested she try something that sounded absurd, even offensive, directing loving kindness toward her father. Her immediate response was fury at the suggestion. "He doesn't deserve my loving kindness," she said. "This isn't for him," her friend replied gently. "It's for you, so you can finally be free." This is the crucial frame we need to hold as we enter day 3. You're not doing this to benefit the person who harmed you. You're doing this to liberate yourself from the ongoing suffering of holding on to resentment. Before we practice the meditation itself, there are preparation practices that make this possible. These aren't optional steps you skip to get to the main event. They're essential groundwork that creates the conditions for genuine release. The first preparation practice sounds particularly challenging. Find 5 good qualities in the person who hurt you. Not excuses for their behavior, not reasons why what they did was okay. Just 5 qualities that are genuinely positive, even if they're small. The woman resisted this for weeks. Every time she tried, her mind would flood with memories of harm, with justified anger, with the voice that said, looking for good qualities was betraying herself and the child she'd been. But she kept trying, and slowly, reluctantly, she began to see. Her father had loved music and had taught her to play guitar before the drinking got worse. He'd been funny, able to make her laugh even in difficult times. He'd taught her to stand up for herself, ironically, through his own stubbornness. He'd loved animals and was always gentle with the family dog, even when he was harsh with people. And he'd had moments, rare but real, where she'd seen him try to fight his addiction, even though he always lost. These qualities didn't erase the harm. They didn't make him a good father, but they made him human, complex, not purely a monster, but a struggling person who caused tremendous pain. This is the first crack in the wall of hatred. seeing that the person who hurt you contains both darkness and light, just like everyone else. The second preparation practice goes deeper. Look at the roots of their suffering. Everyone who causes harm is suffering themselves. This is one of the Buddha's core insights. Happy, peaceful people don't hurt others. People who are whole don't shatter other people's lives. This doesn't excuse the harm. Understanding isn't the same as condoning, but it transforms your relationship to what happened. The woman began researching her father's childhood, asking relatives questions she'd never asked before. What she discovered didn't justify his behavior, but it illuminated it. His own father had been violent, worse than he'd been. He'd grown up in grinding poverty during a war, seeing things children shouldn't see. He'd turned to alcohol as a teenager, to numb pain he had no other way to process. He'd been taught that expressing emotion was weakness, that asking for help was shameful, that self-medication was the only acceptable response to suffering. None of this made what he did to her okay, but it answered the question that had haunted her for decades. How could he? Now she understood how. Not how could someone be so cruel, but how could someone in so much pain, with so few tools, with so little understanding, end up repeating the cycles they inherited? This shift from "how could they" to "now I understand how" is revolutionary. It doesn't mean you approve of what they did. It means you see the conditions that created their actions. You see the suffering that produced suffering. You see the chain of harm extending backward through generations. Each person wounded by the previous one. Each person wounding the next. And seeing this, something unexpected becomes possible. Compassion for someone you thought you could never feel anything but hatred toward. The third preparation practice is perhaps the most uncomfortable. See yourself in them. Not in the harm they caused, but in the human struggles they faced. Fear, pain, inadequacy, the desire to escape suffering through destructive means, the capacity to hurt others when you're drowning in your own hurt. We all have these capacities. Given the right conditions, enough pain, enough ignorance, enough lack of support, any of us could cause harm we'd later regret. This doesn't mean we're equally responsible for all harm in the world. It means we're all human, all capable of both tremendous love and terrible destruction. The woman realized she'd been running from this recognition her whole life. Because if she acknowledged her father's humanity, she'd have to acknowledge her own capacity for causing harm. She remembered times she'd been harsh with her own children when overwhelmed. Times she'd said cutting things to her husband in anger. Times she'd withdrawn love as punishment. She wasn't like her father, but she wasn't entirely unlike him either. This recognition is humbling, uncomfortable, and deeply healing. Because when you see yourself in the person who hurt you, hatred becomes impossible to maintain. You can't purely condemn someone whose struggles you recognize in yourself. There was a teacher who survived abuse from his own teacher when he was young. A revered spiritual leader who everyone respected, who said beautiful things about compassion in public and was cruel in private. The young student carried shame and confusion for years. How could someone who taught wisdom be so harmful? Decades later, after much practice, he began to see. His teacher had likely been abused in his own training, had been taught to equate harshness with discipline, cruelty with spiritual rigor, had probably never dealt with his own trauma, and so passed it on, generation after generation of harm disguised as teaching. Understanding this didn't make the abuse acceptable, but it freed the student from personalizing it, from carrying shame that wasn't his, from believing the harm meant something about his own worthiness. The abuse was about his teacher's unhealed suffering, not about his own deficiency. Now, after these preparation practices, we're ready for the loving-kindness meditation directed toward someone who's caused us suffering. But first, I need to address something crucial. This practice might be too soon for you. If you're still in an actively harmful situation, your first responsibility is safety, not spiritual practice. If the wound is too fresh, if you're still processing trauma, if attempting this feels violent rather than healing, honor that. There's no virtue in forcing yourself into forgiveness or loving kindness before you're ready. That's just another form of harm, this time self-inflicted. Sometimes the practice needs to be, may you be at peace, far away from me. This is still a loving kindness practice. You're wishing them well, while maintaining boundaries that protect your well-being. You're releasing hatred without requiring yourself to reconcile or reconnect. The Buddha taught compassion, but he also taught wisdom. Wisdom knows when distance is necessary, when boundaries are compassionate, when protection comes first. Safety first, always. For those who feel ready, let's practice together. Bring to mind someone who's caused you pain. Not necessarily the person who hurt you most severely. You can work up to that. Start with someone where the resentment is real, but not overwhelming. See them in your mind, not as a villain, not as purely evil, but as a complex human being who caused harm while suffering themselves. Take a breath and recognize this practice is for your freedom, not for their benefit. Now, slowly, offer these phrases. May you be peaceful and light in body and mind. Notice what arises. Resistance, anger, the voice that says they don't deserve peace. That's normal. Breathe with it. You're not wishing them peace because they earned it. You're wishing them peace because their lack of peace is what made them harm you. You're wishing them the conditions that would have prevented them from causing harm in the first place. May you be safe and free from accidents, including the accident of causing harm to others through your own unhealed suffering. May you be free from anger, unwholesome states of mind, and worries. These are the states that drove their harmful actions. Wishing them freedom from these states is wishing they'd been different, wishing the harm hadn't happened. May you know how to look at yourself with the eyes of understanding and compassion. Perhaps if they'd been able to do this, they wouldn't have harmed you. Perhaps if they could do this now, the cycle of harm would stop with them. May you be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in yourself. Happy people don't hurt others. This is a wish that they'd found another way, a healing way, a way that didn't involve causing suffering. May you learn how to nourish yourself with joy each day. Instead of nourishing yourself through harming others, through control, through the false power of causing pain. May you be able to live fresh, solid, and free. Free from whatever drove you to hurt me. Free from the patterns you inherited. Free from the suffering that made you cause suffering. May you not fall into a state of indifference or be caught in the extremes of attachment and aversion. May you find the balance that would have prevented the harm you caused. The woman practiced this meditation for her father every day for 6 months. She never told anyone she was doing it. She didn't contact him. He died years earlier anyway. This was private work, internal alchemy, transformation happening in the quiet of her own heart. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. The rage that had defined her for decades began to dissolve. Not all at once, not completely, but enough that she could breathe differently. Enough that memories of her childhood didn't hijack her entire day. Enough that she could see photos of her father without her body flooding with cortisol. She wasn't suddenly grateful for the abuse. She didn't decide it had been a gift or a lesson. She still wished it hadn't happened, still grieved the childhood she'd lost. But she was free. Free from the prison of hatred. Free from being controlled by someone who'd been dead for years. Free to remember the good moments along with the bad. To hold complexity instead of just rage. She described it to her friend as feeling like she'd been carrying a boulder for 37 years and finally set it down. The Buddha used a different metaphor. He said holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. The practice of directing loving kindness toward those who've harmed you isn't about them. It's about setting down the hot coal. It's about stopping the burning of your own hand. Now, what happens after these 3 days of practice? You don't just return to life as usual, checking a spiritual practice off your list. These 3 days are meant to launch a new way of being in the world. Day 1 taught you to direct loving kindness toward yourself, to become your own friend instead of your own critic. This becomes a daily practice, morning or evening, even just a few minutes, returning to those phrases, watering the seeds of self-compassion. Day 2 taught you to actively love your beloved ones, to see them clearly, to tend to your relationships with intention. This becomes how you move through your days, pausing to really listen, speaking appreciation out loud, asking real questions, and waiting for real answers. Day 3 taught you that freedom from resentment is possible, that you can release yourself from the prison of hatred without condoning harm. This becomes how you handle future hurts, with understanding instead of just reactivity, with wisdom about cycles of suffering, with compassion even for those who cause pain. Together, these 3 days form one complete practice of beginning anew. Not just for New Year's, but for any time you feel stuck, disconnected, burdened by the weight of the past. The woman with the impossible father eventually reached out to her siblings, people she'd avoided because they reminded her of him. She learned about his final years, his regrets, his few attempts to make amends that she'd never known about because she'd shut the door so completely. She didn't regret protecting herself when she'd needed to, but she was grateful she'd eventually found a way to release the hatred that was consuming her. One of her sisters said something that stayed with her. "You know, in the end, he died alone and sad. But you've been living alone and sad for decades, and you're still alive. You had a choice he didn't have, the choice to heal." That's what these 3 days offer you, the choice to heal. Not because you have to, not because you should forgive or let go or be spiritual about it, but because you deserve to be free. Free from the weight you've been carrying, free from the resentments that drain your life force, free from being defined by what was done to you, free to write a new story about who you are and what's possible. Beginning anew isn't about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let the past erase your future. The revolutionary act isn't forgiving those who hurt you. The revolutionary act is choosing your own freedom over your own righteous anger. Recognizing that you deserve peace more than they deserve your hatred. Rest in this for now. You've traveled through 3 profound days of practice, from the hardest person to love yourself, through loving those you already care for, all the way to the ultimate freedom of releasing resentment toward those who've caused harm. This is the complete journey of beginning anew. And now we're ready to explore one more practice that grounds all of this in the earth beneath your feet, connecting you to ancestors, to the land, to the web of relationships that hold you, even when you feel alone. The practice of touching the earth. There's something that happens when you bring your body into your practice that words alone can't accomplish. For 3 days now, we've been working with the mind, directing intention, cultivating loving kindness, transforming our relationship to ourselves and others through awareness and compassion. This work is essential, profound, life-changing. But the Buddha understood that we're not just minds floating in space. We're embodied beings. We carry our stories in our muscles, our grief in our shoulders, our unprocessed emotions in the tension of our jaws. Sometimes the mind can't release what the body is still holding. This is where touching the earth comes in. It's a practice of bringing your whole physical form into contact with the ground beneath you, as a way of releasing what you've been carrying, reconnecting with what supports you, and acknowledging your place in the vast web of relationships that holds you, even when you feel alone. In its traditional form, touching the earth involves full prostrations, lying face down on the ground, with arms extended. But this practice is infinitely adaptable. You can kneel and touch your forehead to the floor. You can sit in a chair and bend forward. You can simply place your palms flat on the ground or on your lap and bow your head. The form matters less than the intention. The willingness to humble yourself, to acknowledge your connection to earth and to all beings, to physically embody the release and reconnection you've been cultivating mentally. There was a woman who'd spent years in therapy, talking about her relationship with her grandmother. She'd worked through the memories, analyzed the patterns, understood intellectually why her grandmother's death had left such a crater in her life. But she still felt the loss like an open wound, still found herself crying unexpectedly, still felt unmoored years after the funeral. A friend invited her to a Buddhist retreat where they practiced touching the earth. The first touching was to ancestors, and as she lowered herself to the ground, something broke open. Lying there with her whole body pressed against the floor, she suddenly felt her grandmother's hands on her back. Not literally, she knew that, but the sensation was so vivid, so real. Her grandmother's strong hands that had kneaded bread, that had held her when she cried, that had guided her own small hands as she learned to sew. What therapy couldn't quite reach, the body released. Lying on the earth, she understood in her bones what her mind had been trying to grasp. Her grandmother wasn't gone. She lived in the woman's hands, in her gestures, in the way she comforted her own children. The connection hadn't been severed by death. It had only changed form. This is the first of 5 touchings, connecting with ancestors, both blood and spiritual. Your ancestors aren't just the people you knew personally. They're the long line of humans who survived impossible things so that you could be here. They're the spiritual teachers whose wisdom reached you across centuries, the Buddha himself, the masters who preserved and transmitted these teachings, the practitioners who kept the flame alive through difficult times. When you touch the earth to honor ancestors, you're acknowledging, I didn't get here alone. I stand on the shoulders of countless people who struggled, who loved, who persevered, who passed something essential down to me. You might bring to mind a specific ancestor, a grandparent, a great-grandparent you never met, but whose story shaped your family. Or you might simply acknowledge the vast network of ancestors stretching back through generations, all the way to the first humans who looked up at stars and wondered. The second touching connects you to the land where you live. There's a story of a man who moved to a new city for work and spent 2 years feeling completely displaced, unrooted, homesick for a place he couldn't return to. During a walk one evening, exhausted from another day of feeling alien in this foreign place, he sat down on the grass in a park and just stayed there. He let his hands sink into the soil. He felt the earth supporting him. And slowly, it occurred to him, this ground had been here long before the city was built, long before the borders were drawn, long before the concept of foreign existed. This earth didn't care about his nationality or his resident status. It held him the same way it had held indigenous peoples for thousands of years, the same way it would hold whoever came after him. He started touching the earth every evening, literally placing his palms on the ground and saying, "Thank you. Thank you for holding me. Thank you for growing food that nourishes me. Thank you for being stable when I feel unstable." Within months, the feeling of displacement had transformed into a sense of belonging, not to the city, but to the earth itself, which is everywhere home. When you touch the earth to honor the land, you're acknowledging that you're held, quite literally, that gravity is an act of constant embrace, that you're supported, whether you notice it or not. The third touching honors the people who built the life you're living now. A teacher once had her students make a list before this practice. Who made your today possible? The students started with obvious answers: parents, teachers, friends. Then they went deeper. The farmer who grew their breakfast, the person who drove the delivery truck, the construction workers who built the roads they drive on, the engineers who designed the electricity system that powers their homes, the countless humans whose labor, often invisible and underappreciated, makes modern life possible. By the time they finished their lists, everyone was overwhelmed by the web of interconnection. Hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of people whose efforts contributed to this single ordinary day. When you touch the earth for this, you're acknowledging, I am supported by so many I will never meet, never thank in person, never fully understand how much I depend on them. This touching cultivates humility and gratitude simultaneously. The fourth touching is for the people you love, the ones from day 2 of our practice, the ones whose happiness is intertwined with yours. This one feels most natural because we already know we're grateful for these people. But there's something powerful about embodying that gratitude, about literally bowing to the earth in acknowledgement of how much they mean to you. A father practiced this touching while thinking of his young daughter. He'd gotten so caught up in the logistics of parenting, schedules, homework, discipline, that he'd stopped feeling the gratitude that had overwhelmed him when she was born. Lying on the ground, bringing her clearly to mind, he remembered, this being chose to arrive in my life. This being trusts me to guide her. This being's laughter is one of the best sounds I know. When he stood up from that touching, something had shifted. He went home, and instead of starting the evening routine on autopilot, he paused in his daughter's doorway and just watched her playing. She looked up, surprised by his presence, and he said simply, "I'm really glad you're my daughter." That's what this touching offers. A reset, a return to what matters, a physical reminder to not take love for granted. The fifth touching is the most challenging. It's for those who've caused you suffering. This mirrors the work you did on day 3, but now you're bringing your body into it. You're physically releasing the resentment you've been carrying, letting the earth take it from you. A woman who practiced this for her ex-husband, someone who'd betrayed her in ways that shattered her trust, described it as feeling like she was literally laying down a burden. Not forgiving him, not saying what he did was okay, not even wishing him well, particularly. Just releasing the grip, loosening her hands from around the anger she'd been clutching, like a weapon that was only hurting her. She lay on the earth and imagined all that hatred draining out of her body into the ground, where it could be composted, transformed, turned into something that nourished growth instead of feeding bitterness. When she rose from that touching, she felt lighter in a way no amount of talking or thinking had achieved. Now, how do you actually practice this? If you're able-bodied and comfortable doing so, you can do full prostrations, lying face down with arms extended forward, staying there for several breaths before rising. If full prostrations aren't accessible for you, there are many adaptations. You can kneel and touch your forehead to the floor or to a cushion. You can sit in a chair and bend forward, letting your hands rest on your knees or reach toward the ground. You can stand and bow deeply from the waist. You can simply sit quietly with your palms pressed together and your head bowed. The practice honors all bodies, all abilities, all forms of bowing. What matters is the internal gesture of humility, gratitude, release, and reconnection, not the exact physical shape you make. Let's practice together now. Gently, at your own pace. Find a position that feels stable and comfortable for you. This might be standing, sitting, kneeling, or lying down. There's no wrong way to do this. When you're ready, begin with the first touching, connecting to ancestors. Bring to mind those who came before you, whose lives made your life possible. If you're able, lower yourself toward the earth in whatever way your body allows. Stay here for 3 breaths, feeling held by the same ground that held your ancestors. Rise slowly when you're ready. The second touching, honoring the land. Touch the earth again, acknowledging the ground that supports you right now, the soil that grows your food, the planet that holds all life. 3 breaths, feeling gravity as embrace. Rise slowly. The third touching, gratitude for those who make your life possible. Lower yourself once more, thinking of all the people whose labor, whose care, whose existence contributes to your well-being. 3 breaths, feeling the vast web of support. Rise slowly. The fourth touching, appreciation for people you love. Touch the earth for them, holding them in your heart, feeling gratitude for their presence in your life. 3 breaths, letting love flow through you into the ground. Rise slowly. The fifth touching, release for those who caused suffering. This one is optional, only if you feel ready. Lower yourself one last time, and instead of holding on to resentment, imagine laying it down, letting the earth take it, letting yourself be free. 3 breaths, feeling the release. Rise slowly, taking your time. Stand or sit quietly for a moment, noticing how you feel. This practice of touching the earth completes the 3-day journey of beginning anew. You've worked with your mind, through meditation, with your relationships, through intention, and now, with your body, through physical practice. You've touched yourself with compassion, your beloved ones with love, those who harmed you with understanding, and the earth itself with gratitude. You've connected the internal work of transformation with the external reality of your embodied, interconnected life. This is how beginning anew becomes complete, not just as mental practice, but as a full-bodied return to presence, to gratitude, to freedom. Now we're ready for one more teaching, one that takes us even deeper into what these practices make possible. The teaching on the 2 dimensions, time and timelessness, and how beginning anew can happen not just once, but in every single moment. There's a teaching the Buddha offered that changes everything once you truly understand it. We've spent these past 3 days working with practices situated in time. Day 1, Day 2, Day 3. New year, fresh starts, beginning again. All of these assume time is real, that there's a past to release, and a future to move into. And in one dimension of reality, this is absolutely true. Time exists. Things change. Moments pass. We age, we grow, we learn, we let go. But the Buddha discovered something that sounds impossible at first. There's another dimension of reality where time doesn't exist at all. Imagine a wave on the surface of the ocean. The wave has a clear beginning, the moment it rises from the water's surface. It has a clear end, the moment it crashes back down or dissolves into flatness. If you ask the wave about its life, it might say, "I was born over there near that boat. I'm traveling toward the shore, and soon I'll die when I reach the beach." From the wave's perspective, birth and death are absolutely real. Time is real. The wave has a history, where it came from, what it's experienced, where it's going. This is what the Buddha called the historical dimension, the realm where everything has a beginning and an end, where time flows forward, where change is constant and inevitable. We live most of our lives in this dimension. We're born, we age, we die. Relationships begin, they evolve, sometimes they end. New Year comes, the old year goes. Everything is constantly in motion, constantly transforming. But here's what changes everything. The wave is also water. And water has no beginning and no end. Water doesn't die when the wave crashes. Water wasn't born when the wave rose. Water simply is, in a dimension beyond time, beyond birth and death, beyond coming and going. If the wave could touch itself deeply enough, it would recognize, I am not just this temporary form. I am water, and water is eternal, formless, always present, never born, never dying. This recognition is what the Buddha called touching the ultimate dimension. Now, you might be thinking, that's a beautiful metaphor, but what does it mean for my actual life? Let me bring it closer. Right now, you have a body that was born on a specific date. That's real. That body will die on a date not yet known. That's also real. In the historical dimension, you are like the wave. You have a beginning, a middle, and you'll have an end. But in the ultimate dimension, you're like the water. The atoms that make up your body have existed since the beginning of the universe. They've been stars, rocks, plants, other animals, other humans. They've taken countless forms, and they'll take countless more after this body dissolves. Your consciousness, your awareness, where did it come from? Your parents, yes, but also their parents and theirs, stretching back through an unbroken chain of consciousness that has no identifiable beginning. You carry within you the DNA of ancestors going back millions of years. You carry their experiences, their adaptations, their survival strategies encoded in your cells. You are not separate from them. You are their continuation. And everything you learn, everything you become, will continue in others after you, in your children, if you have them, in students, if you teach, in everyone whose life you touch, in the ripples your existence creates, in the vast web of interconnection. So in the ultimate dimension, You have no birth date because you've always existed in some form. And you have no death date because you'll continue to exist in some form. This isn't reincarnation in the sense of a soul moving from body to body. Buddhism doesn't teach that we have souls. It's something both more mysterious and more obvious. You are a wave of the ocean of existence, temporarily taking this form, but never separate from the ocean itself. Now, what does this have to do with beginning anew? Everything. Because once you understand that you exist in both dimensions simultaneously, everything changes. In the historical dimension, New Year makes sense. We track time. We mark transitions. We create rituals around endings and beginnings. These are human inventions, but they're not wrong or meaningless. They help us navigate the dimension of change. Right now, as you listen to this, different parts of the world are in different times. Some places have already entered tomorrow, while others are still in yesterday. New Year travels across the planet like a wave, arriving in Bangkok before it arrives in Paris, in New York before it arrives in Los Angeles. This shows you something profound. Time is a human construction, a useful one, an important one, but not an absolute reality. It's a way we organize our experience, not the fundamental nature of existence itself. And once you see this clearly, you're freed from the tyranny of the calendar. You don't need to wait for January 1st to begin anew. You don't need Monday, or the first of the month, or your birthday, or any other arbitrary marker. Because in the ultimate dimension, every moment is both an ending and a beginning. Every breath is a complete cycle. The in-breath arises from nothing, exists for a moment, dissolves into nothing. The out-breath does the same. You are constantly dying and being reborn, constantly ending and beginning, not just once a year, but thousands of times each day. This is why the Buddha taught that mindfulness practice touches both dimensions at once. When you direct loving kindness toward yourself, may I be peaceful and light in body and mind. You're working in the historical dimension. You're addressing the you who exists in time, who has a history, who carries wounds that need healing. But simultaneously, you're touching the ultimate dimension. You're recognizing that beneath the temporary form of me, with all its problems and struggles, there's something vast, something that was never born and will never die. Something that is already at peace because it exists outside the realm where suffering happens. The wave practicing loving kindness toward itself is also the ocean loving itself. And when you touch this ultimate dimension even briefly, fear dissolves. Not because you're pretending death isn't real, but because you understand that what you truly are cannot die. The form will change, the wave will crash, but water remains water. Consciousness remains consciousness. Energy remains energy, transforming endlessly, but never actually destroyed. There was a monk who was asked by a grieving mother, "Where did my child go when he died?" The monk took her outside and pointed to a candle burning in the temple window. "Watch," he said, and blew out the candle. "Where did the flame go?" he asked. The mother understood. The flame didn't go anywhere. It never was a separate thing that could go somewhere. It was always just energy, temporarily manifesting in that form, and now manifesting in other forms, heat dispersed into air, chemical bonds rearranged, the cycle continuing without break. Her child hadn't gone anywhere. Her child was everywhere, woven back into the fabric of existence, from which he'd never truly been separate. This teaching isn't meant to bypass grief or make loss less painful in the historical dimension. In that dimension, loss is real, and grief is the appropriate response. But knowing the ultimate dimension exists alongside the historical dimension changes how we hold our grief. We grieve the form while recognizing the continuation of the essence. We miss the wave while knowing the water remains. So when we practice beginning anew, we're doing something miraculous. We're working skillfully in the historical dimension while simultaneously touching the ultimate dimension. We're using the construct of 3 days and New Year and fresh start, all historical dimension concepts, to recognize something that exists in the ultimate dimension. You are always fresh, always new, always beginning, because you exist in a realm where time doesn't actually exist. The practice frees you from calendar tyranny, not by denying time, but by helping you see through it to what's always been true. You don't need permission to begin again, because you're beginning again with every breath, whether you notice it or not. This is the deepest gift of these teachings. Not just that you can begin anew, but that you are always already beginning anew, because that's the fundamental nature of existence in both dimensions. Constant transformation in the historical, eternal presence in the ultimate. You are the wave, riding the surface of time, experiencing birth and death, change and impermanence. And you are the water, timeless and deathless, always here, never separate from the vast ocean of existence. Both are true. Both are you. And practicing with both dimensions available to you, that's the freedom the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. That's the freedom he spent his life teaching others to discover for themselves. That's the freedom these 3 days of beginning anew are designed to help you touch, not just intellectually, but experientially, in the very texture of your moment-to-moment living. So as we come to the end of these teachings, remember, you're not really ending anything. You're continuing, transforming, beginning again, even as you complete this particular wave of practice. And that's perfect. That's exactly how it should be. Because in the ultimate dimension, there is no end. There is only endless beginning, eternal presence, the deathless nature of what you truly are, beneath all the temporary forms you take. Rest in that for a moment. Feel it. Not just think about it, but touch it directly in your experience right now. You are here. You have always been here. You will always be here. Not as this particular form, but as the formless awareness that witnesses all forms, as the water that takes the shape of every wave. Now let's bring this understanding back into the practical world, back into your daily life, back into how you actually live from this moment forward. Here's what you need to know about carrying this forward. You don't need 3 consecutive days to begin anew. You can practice day 1 on a Tuesday morning, day 2, 3 weeks later, day 3, when you're finally ready. This isn't a rigid formula. It's a living practice that adapts to your life. You'll forget. You'll return to old patterns, lose your mindfulness, let weeks pass without practicing loving kindness toward yourself or anyone else. This isn't failure. This is being human. The miracle isn't never forgetting. The miracle is remembering to come back. Again and again, with patience, with gentleness, without judgment. Your Buddha body grows quietly, even when you're not paying attention. Every kind choice, every mindful breath, every moment you pause instead of react, these water the seeds, whether you notice or not. So where are you now, after these 3 hours together? How do you feel? Something has shifted, hasn't it? Maybe subtle, maybe profound, but something has opened. This recording will be here whenever you need to begin again. Return to it, like coming home. And if it feels right, share in the comments where you're listening from, your location, your time of day, what you're hoping to begin anew. We're building something together, all of us practicing in different corners of the world, connected by this intention to wake up, to heal, to love better. Beginning anew is always available, not just once a year. Right now, this breath, this moment is a happy moment. May you be peaceful and light in body and mind. May we all begin again, together.